Hey guys, let's talk about what is strong for solos in the patch 57/2. It is after the rogue nerfs happened, the hotfix was great and definitely helped the meta for solos. So let's talk about what is still OP, what's needs adjustments, what is in a good spot and like what is a little bit lacking. Right? Let's start with Barbarian. Barbarian, I personally would put in the middle of the pack, somewhere B tier. They do have actually 3 viable builds that people are running. Most of them are based on Bardage. Like you stack a little bit of dexterity, you took a Bardage, the weapon got buffed a couple of patches ago. It is very strong, maybe a little bit too strong even. But Barbarian has some other problems, like the lack of a range weapon that doesn't allow him to be in the top tiers. He doesn't have reliable range damage. He will struggle against a lot of other classes. You need to stack dexterity for the Bardage to work. That means you will not be able to reach the highest move speed. And yeah, it kind of puts him in the middle of the pack. There are 2 different builds with Barbarian as well. One where you actually stack move speed, and you go for like the Coprolite gear that gives you additional move speed, Coprolite hat, Coprolite tunic. Then you run around pretty fast. You take like a Horseman X and a Felling X combination, and you just chase down people. And the third build is kind of a meme build, but it has certainly potential. It is the one-shot build where you just one-tap everyone in the head, mainly using a double X or a Bardage again, and playing with Reckless Attack plus Armor Pen on gear. So you stack 100% Armor Pen, you just do true damage to the enemy's head. If you hit your right click on a double X, if you hit like a couple of good attacks on your Bardage, the person is dead. Barbarian is stronger in their below 125 lobbies. His base damage is pretty decent. You just stack a little bit of move speed, and he actually dominates the lower lobbies more than he's performing in the higher lobbies. Also, it's a class that profits a lot from skins. Like, just getting yourself like a Lycan skin or a Lizard skin will help Barbarian out a lot, especially in the lower lobbies. It is insanely powerful. Okay, the next one, Bard. Bard is actually an A tier. It's a pretty decent class for solos. A lot of good buffs. You run buffed up the entire time. A lot of buttons that you have to press, but in a good rate spot. And, well, basically Bard is an A tier. Like you will see the other classes will be here up as well. They are bow users. Using a bow in this patch is the way to go. It has a lot of damage, especially if you stack true physical damage on your like both your rings, your amulet, your cloak, and your gloves. These are 5 items where you can stack true damage. On the amulet, you can go even for a frost amulet that has like up to +5 true damage. It's pretty insane. And just running a survival bow with decent movement speed and just shooting people down makes Bard extremely efficient. On top of that, he is pretty tanky because you can get a little bit of max HP and all his buffs give him so many free stats that he can actually fight you after you shot a couple of arrows into you. Cleric. Cleric is in a rough spot right now. He was an S tier for solos for a little bit of time when he got buffed. SDF even told himself that he wanted Cleric to be OP, so he overbuffed him. But right now he is struggling. I would also put him somewhere in B tier. You can't really go plated on Cleric right now because a lot of range meta. You actually have to go move speed. And if you're going move speed, you will lose the melee fight. So what people are opting to do on Cleric right now is playing more or less a caster Cleric. You play Judgment and you have a spellbook out, so you just bind people, you Judgment them, you play it pretty slow, basically more like a wizard. It certainly works, it certainly has potential, but it's nowhere near to be OP like it was. Druid. Well, I'm actually happy about this, but Druid right now is completely dogshit. It is perhaps the weakest class for solos. It still has one insanely good upside that it will basically never die. If you don't want to die as a druid, you will not die. You have so much mobility, you have so much utility, you can always just keep running away from your opponent. The problem starts though if you want to kill somebody. Killing somebody as a druid right now is pretty tough. the majority of kills that you will get if you either surprise attack a person or use a third party into something. It's not that easy to get a 1v1 kill as a druid. Druid is in a weird spot where he cannot die from basically any class, but he also cannot kill basically any class. So he's just like stuck there in this PvE routine, where he's running away, killing PvE enemies, looting some stuff, but not actually performing great. Well, and after the worst classes patch, we have the strongest classes patch, the fighter. Definitely S tier. The buffs on the fighter were completely unnecessary. There was no reason to buff him. Fighter is just a killing machine right now. With sprint, he can build himself a decently like 55, 60% PDR set with being movement speed capped with sprint. And weapon out. Like, he's just running around very fast. The buffs of his perks were unnecessary, and now Fighter has like two major problems because of these buffs. First of all, he's way too fast for how tanky he is. Like, his PDR and move speed scalings are just completely off. It's the only class that can go that high. And also, he also is very good with bows. Imagine like it's basically a ranger, but instead of having like being squishy, having 120 HP and like just running away from you, this guy can run away from you, shoot you with a bow, and also have 50% PDR and 150 HP. It's just mind blowing. They are the strongest in melee. They still lose to barbarians if they go extremely close and just fight with a sword or so. But the fact that they can just utilize a bow, like any bow, you can take a longbow, you can take a recurve bow, you can take a survival bow, all these bow works, makes him completely OP. You cannot catch him, and he just needs a couple of arrows, and then he will win the melee fight against you already. Well, talking of another bow user, we have the Ranger. Even stronger than the Bard, I would argue. What makes Ranger so strong is that, same as Fighter and Bard, it is a bow meta. He is completely abusing the bow meta. He is strong just by kiting away, just by running, shooting you, like triple shotting you, poking you away. Even the shotgun meta build is pretty decent. He just hits a couple of arrows before you reach him, then he takes shotgun, shoots you with a longbow strength build, and you're just gone. Rangers are in a great spot. What makes them even more OP are the traps. Traps are insanely OP. They are so oppressive that basically, if you see a ranger, you will never want to chase him. If you're playing something like a barbarian and your only option is to hit somebody in melee, you will never chase a ranger. You will just have like 3-4 traps set up somewhere, you will have to respect those, and while you're trying to avoid all the dark spots where traps might be, you will just like each dark spot that you have to jump over to avoid a trap, even if it isn't there, means the ranger has one free hit on you. It's very easy to hit targets that are in the air. So each time you jump over a dark spot, a ranger has one free hit on you. You take like 3 or 4 free hits, you're almost dead. Traps are what making Ranger extremely strong. The only reason he's not S tier is because he's actually losing bow fights to Fighter. A Fighter with a bow is stronger than Ranger with a bow because Fighter has all the additional PDR. Rogues. Rogues got nerfed, and we saw a lot of rogue mains cry because of it, like that they are completely dogshit now and stuff. That's not true. Rogues are in a decent spot. Right now, rogues actually require a little bit of knowledge of the game, a little bit of skill to play, compared to before the patch. Before the patch, you were completely silent. You didn't do any noise, like, you weren't seen and hide. Like, it was just like a free game for rogues. Right now, they aren't great, but they are in a decent spot. I would say, yeah, they are still pretty good against Ranger and Bard just because they can have this ambush effect. Against fighters, they struggle a little bit more, but thanks to Stiletto Dagger, just like the strongest DPS weapon for rogues, they are still able to destroy even PDR fighters with all the armor pen they have for free. So rogues are in a good spot right now. They don't really need a lot of adjustments. They are in a great spot. Don't listen to people that are crying about them. Yeah. I split Warlock up in 2 different builds because they are very different from each other, like the casting Warlock build and the demon Warlock build. So these have like 2 separate icons. The caster Warlock build is struggling right now. The problem with him is like pretty much all the classes kill him too fast. The time to kill right now is not so good for caster Warlock. The only moment where he can actually destroy majority of classes and when he fights in a lot of PvE. Because he can use this PvE to heal himself up. He can Phantomize in this PvE to like reset his aggro to run through them. He doesn't get body block because of his Phantomize. If he fights in like a group of PvE, a group of like 5 goblins, 5 skeletons, I don't know, whatever, he will most likely win the fight. In a straight up 1v1 where he just has to face somebody who's shooting him with a bow or just running him down, he will struggle a lot. It is still possible if you have like absolute best in slot gear and 330 move speed, running around with your spellbook and have good casting speed. Yeah, sure, but if the class is only playable when he has a lot of gear, that means something is wrong about it. The Demon Warlock, on the other hand, is kind of in a different spot. He performs the best at lower gear stages because of the Soul Collector that you can have like 5 to all stats. Sorry for my voice, guys. Demon Warlock is actually performing the best in under 25 lobbies. Even above, he's still good, but he requires a lot of movement speed to be viable. So I would put him above the Casting Warlock, somewhere in B tier. He's not great, but he's in a decent spot. He can definitely play. He needs a lot of agility to catch up on his targets, but he can actually fight fighters in melee if he has a little bit of max HP, and he can also fight barbarians, so... The problems the Demon Warlock is lacking is also he can get kited. Rangers and bards will totally get to him, but he's in a decent spot. He may be even above the cleric, to be fair. Maybe above the barbarian, I'm not quite sure. It's somewhere B tier. They're all pretty close. Like the power curve of all these classes is pretty close to each other. Let's put him above the barbarian for now. Then we have the wizard. That's the last class I didn't talk about yet. It is the mid-range king. If you have a geared wizard, you will be able to fight against a ranger, bard, or a fighter at mid-range. You will lose at high range, you will lose at close range, but mid-range is where the wizard excels. It is good, but not strong enough to actually counter these classes completely. After the Bonk Wizard nerfs, his melee is questionable. He loses pretty much all the melee fights. The only way is actually fight in mid-range, and also as the Caster Warlock, you are gear reliant. You need enough gear to, first of all, survive a couple of arrows that will hit you, and secondly, have enough damage to actually burst down the target in a couple of spells. If you have the gear, then Wizard is definitely somewhere in B tier. Above the Cleric most likely, maybe even above the Barbarian. I would say something like this. On low gear though, I would not recommend playing Wizard. It'll be tough. Low gear Wizard is not so good. I would say this would be my tier list for patch 57.2, with definitely the 3 bow classes being on the top. And you can nerf these classes individually, like you can nerf fighter, revert his changes, or just like at least nerf weapon mastery for range weapons. That's what it has to be done. Rangers need their trap nerfed, or you can keep all the mechanics like they are, but just nerf bows in general. That would be my solution for the next patch. How to kind of balance it all out. The Druid just needs general buffs. Druid needs a little bit more damage options. Maybe return the Panther build. The Caster Warlock will automatically become better once the bow meta drops. So yeah, just nerfing bows, buffing Druid a little bit, and all the classes will be more or less in the same spot for solos. I'm specifically talking about solos, guys. And 3-mans and duos, the meta is completely different. So keep that in mind. Hope it helped you out. Hope you know what to play now this patch. And see you all on my streams. Twitch TV Leshy 101.